Hello, sweet viewers. 안녕. That means hi in Korean. I'm Christine from Kimbap TV, empowering you to live a happier and safer life, especially if you're a fellow domestic violence survivor. In the past couple of videos, I've been retracing my steps to when I first became a survivor. Last time I shared about the importance of having a support system when you leave your abuser. Now let's keep going with my journey to when I return home. My DV relationship was in a different city and state from where I grew up. Within a week of my abuser almost killing me, my aunt flew in and helped me to pack up the broken pieces of my life. In less than a week, I was out of there, and we took a long road trip back home to Southern California. I always dreamed of coming back home, but never would have guessed it would be under these circumstances. It was humbling, to say the least. I felt so defeated in every sense of the word. The coming days would be like a wild roller coaster ride, and I'll share some things I did to keep my mind on the right track. Let's go. When my aunt and I were driving to Los Angeles, I had no idea what to expect, and honestly, I didn't really care. I cringed at the thought of seeing my mom again. Was she 잔소리 or nag? Would I have to move back home with her and my grandparents? Would they all just be so disappointed in me? Thinking about these things just made my headache worse. Luckily, so luckily, my aunt had arranged an oasis for me. She let me stay in an empty house while I navigated through the next chapter of this ordeal. Her daughter, my cousin, had recently purchased and renovated a house, and they were waiting to rent it out. So they were nice enough to let me stay there while I figured out my next steps. At first, I was terrified because ever since my abuser assaulted me at night, I hated being alone. My imagination would get the best of me sometimes, and I get flashbacks and nightmares on a regular basis, and I constantly feared that he may be following me. I very rarely went out for the first few days because every time I saw a black car of a certain make and model, I froze, thinking it was my abuser. I had an emergency protective order and let my local law enforcement agencies know. Most of them were extremely nice and helpful. One police department even let me know that they would make extra rounds around my mom's house in case my abuser was in town. But one police lieutenant was beyond unhelpful. I had asked an officer to file a copy of my emergency protective order, but he disregarded me. I then asked for his supervisor, and this lieutenant came out. He told me to go back to where I came from because they didn't work with my emergency protective order from another state. So you may come across some people like that, and like me, you may get very upset and re-traumatized, but try not to take it personally. That person's boss ended up apologizing to me sincerely, and I don't have any negative feelings anymore. Just sadness that some people who choose to protect us intentionally cause us more harm instead. But this world is broken, and there will always be some rotten eggs anywhere you go. In addition to letting local law enforcement agencies know about my situation, I also started calling police stations in every city and state where my abuser used to live. It was important for me to track down anything on his record. My gut told me, after seeing the way he smiled as he was beating me, that this wasn't his first time doing this. But the reason I'm making videos like this is because very few people make that call to the law enforcement to document what happened. And I knew chances were slim that his previous victims, if they do exist, would have done this. I really wish they would have, but still I needed to try. So I called and called and called. My abuser and I met on an online matchmaking site, and I later learned he was still on that particular site as well as on multiple other ones. He had lied about this, by the way, during our relationship. So I started calling all of those websites as well, just letting them know about what happened. I spent so much of the first few weeks after leaving my abuser trying to uncover bits and pieces of my abuser's past that could help justify the gross injustice that I was forced to endure. In some ways, maybe because I'm a journalist, it made me feel like I was getting some of my power back. It made me feel better because I wasn't just sitting around feeling helpless. But after a certain point, either I realized or my friends let me know that maybe that wasn't so healthy for me. So I tried to find more therapeutic activities that could occupy my mind. My cousin taught me how to crochet. I really sucked at it, but it did pass the time. I did a lot of crocheting while watching Hallmark movies and drinking wine. I know I should have stayed away from wine because it had intensified my headache, but at the time I really wanted some and I killed the pain with Advil. I do not recommend this, but I want to be honest with you and let you know that it was a temporary coping mechanism for me. I also started walking on the beach. That was a recommendation from my therapist. I walked for about an hour and a half usually because that's when my therapist told me that I would start tuning the world out and really get into being in the moment. That hour and a half eventually turned into 2, then 3, then one time, more than 5 hours. I fell in love with the sound of the waves, the sand in my feet, the sun on my face. I lost a lot of weight during that season because as my headache started to subside, I started turbo kickboxing and going to body pumps classes too. Pushing my body to sweat and tiring myself out helped me to alleviate stress and to get better sleep. So these are just 3 of many things I did when I initially returned to a safe home after leaving my abuser. I can share more in the future, but for now, I hope this helps and gives you some ideas on what you can do to pass the time and do something productive for yourself. Chances are, if you're in this situation now or have been, your mind is just a big ball of chaos. Nothing makes sense. You break out into tears at any time of the day, and there are moments when you just can't see any ray of hope. But keeping busy in these ways really helped me to just keep living and take things one day at a time. Thank you so much for watching my stories. Please take a moment to like, subscribe, and share this with someone who you think needs to see this message. Take great care of yourselves, and I'll see you again in my next video. Bye.